Okay.
Is everybody seeing the screen share? You're seeing the lesson 1 brain basics on your screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Marianne, did you have anything else you wanted to say before I start?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All right. My name is Cheryl Deep, and I'm from the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University. And Donna McDonald, who's also in the gallery, is my teammate. She and I together devised these Brainstorm lessons. There are 12 of them in all. I'm not sure how many OCP is going to present, probably at least 10. And each one goes into depth about a certain portion area of your brain. There's one on memory, there's one on sleep, there's one on nutrition, all the things that ensure good brain health and good body health, as it turns out. So the first one is a rough overview. We're not going to be neuroscientists by the time we finish this presentation, but we will know at least enough about the brain to appreciate what it needs and what it doesn't like, and to understand the next lessons that we go through. So everyone should be unmuted, because the first thing I like to be sure of is everyone listening? If you can all hear me. So this is kind of a test of whether you can hear me and whether I can hear you. So we're going to spell the word POTS out loud. All of us together, are you ready? P-O-T-S. And let's do it again. P-O-T-S. One more time, a little louder, a little faster. P-O-T-S. Now, what do you do at a green light?
Stop.
Oh, we gotcha.
Oh, green light.
We definitely got you. I can tell by those giggles and laughs that we got you pretty much every time. Okay, thanks for the interaction. Now, if you can all mute again, I'll explain to you a little bit about why your brain did that. It's kind of interesting. It's not that different from the Yahoo Kazoo thing that Josette and I were talking about at the beginning. I primed your brain by giving you those 4 letters. Now, we didn't spell stop. We spelled POTS, which is stop backwards. But the brain is a little bit lazy, and it jumped to the conclusion that somehow the answer to that next question was going to have something to do with those same letters, whether they were forward or backward. So we're kind of in a rut. The brain likes to do what it wants to do. It took the easy way out, and it jumped to stop. We do all know, though, right? What we're really supposed to do at a green light is supposed to go. So all of you drivers out there, I hope you're really going at green lights and not stopping. Oh, wrong way. Okay. So a little bit about the brain. One question we always get is, how big is it? And how big is it compared to other brains? We like to think that the human brain is the biggest of all, but it really isn't. If you take a look at this bottlenose dolphin brain, it's about 1/3 bigger than ours. So be nice to dolphins, because they might actually be smarter than we are. But the human brain holds its own. It's bigger than chimpanzees, and fortunately it's a lot bigger than a rat's, so that makes me personally feel a lot better about it. The size generally for all of us, if you take your 2 hands and put them together in front of you, your fists, make a fist, that's roughly the size of your brain, 2 lobes of your brain. And the average brain weighs about 3 pounds. Does size matter? Well, apparently not that much, because Albert Einstein, who we all know is a huge genius, his brain only weighed 2.71 pounds. And still he thought great and wonderful thoughts every day of his life. So it can be a little under, it can be a little over. The weight itself doesn't really matter all that much. And the important thing also to remember is that even though the bottlenose dolphin's brain is bigger and an elephant brain is bigger, it's not as complex. Our brain has 2 separate hemispheres, and within those hemispheres, 6 lobes on each side, and each lobe is dedicated to something in particular. There's the occipital lobe, which is all about how we see. Eyesight is a very big part of the brain. Other parts that have to do with how we feel things. So we may not have it in size, but we do have it in complexity. And what is that big old brain made of? No, it's not a Jell-O salad like it looks like in this picture. It is made, however, 60% fat, which surprises a lot of people. So when you were in elementary school and somebody called you a fathead, they were actually telling the truth, because 60% of your brain is made out of fat. And a lot of it is also water. So that tells me 2 things. We need those essential fatty acids in order to give the right nutrition to the brain. It lives for those. It helps to balance the chemicals that all the brain cells are in. So those are your omega-3s, your omega-6s, fish oils. We hear a lot about those, and they really are pretty good for the brain. You don't want to deny the brain of fat. Very, very low-fat diets can actually cause a little starvation in the brain. The other thing it tells me is that water is very important, and that's an easy thing for us to supply. So we need to drink up. Dehydration is really bad for the brain. And sometimes we can be dehydrated and not even realize that we're dehydrated. Unfortunately, as we get older, our ability to sense thirst, that really desperate need to take a drink of water, tends to diminish. So even though your body is drying out and feeling dehydrated, your taste buds aren't saying, give me a glass of water. So the older we are, the more you have to just sort of be on a regular regimen, and I'm going to drink a glass of water every hour or every 2 hours. Question we always get is, how much water is enough water? And sometimes the answer to that question, I've heard even some experts give, is really kind of wrong and a little dangerous, because you can drink too much water, and that can cause problems too. So at one point somebody was saying 64 ounces a day, which is just kind of crazy, and no one can really do that. You'd spend all your time in the bathroom getting rid of it on the other end. So who wants a life like that? Generally, for women, men, it's roughly 11 to 12 cups of water per day. And that includes the water that you get from food. So when you get about 20% of your water from food. If you're like me and it's the summertime and you're eating a lot of watermelon, yeah, I'm probably getting 50% of my water from food. So if 20% of it is food, vegetables, fruits, then that's 80% from actual beverages. Doesn't have to be water, although water's quite good. So about 9 to 10 cups of beverage. Tea is fine, herbal teas are fine. We just say to be very careful with the caffeinated drinks, because while you are getting the fluid in, the caffeine is a diuretic, which makes you pee a lot more of the fluid out. So you may lose more than you take in, and net, it's not so good for you. What I do like to let people know, because in everybody's food and fluid needs are a little bit different, the best test of whether you're hydrated perfectly and making your brain really happy is the urine color test. So after you go to the bathroom, just take a look in the toilet, assuming you don't have one of those bleach balls in there that turns the water blue. If it's plain water, look at the color. This light straw color is good. When it starts to get a little darker and more yellow, then that means you're starting to get dehydrated. It means you're concentrating your urine too much. So just take a look at that. It's the best way. If it's much lighter than this yellow, if you almost can't even tell that it's in there, you're drinking too much water. You can cut back on your beverages. So that's really the best way for each individual to know whether they're getting the right amount of water. Okay, so that's the brain. Likes fat, it likes water. What is it made of? What's inside there? The brain is very different than any other organ in our body, and that's because it's composed of neurons. So this is what a neuron cell looks like. Most of the cells in our body are round. They're just little round things, and they are up against a lot of other cells that are round, and they can only communicate with the cells that they touch. So if I'm a little round cell, I have maybe 10 cells around me that I can talk to, and the rest are out of reach. And then maybe that one would pass the message on to the next one, but I can only talk directly to the ones that I touch. Well, that won't work for the brain. The brain has these special kinds of cells called neurons. They look like tree roots, and you'll see they don't really touch any other cell. They have these little roots that come out, but they're just floating in these chemicals, and they're not touching. And the beauty of that is that that allows every neuron to pass an electrical impulse way beyond its neighbors. It can go way out here, over here. It can send that electricity across this gap to an infinite number of cells. And that's what allows us to retrieve memories from long ago. It lets you remember the face of your 3rd grade teacher. It lets you remember 5 years ago where you went on vacation. because the cells keep adding up and you can go back in time through lots of cells to connect with other cells. Other interesting thing about neurons is they don't feel any pain. So pretty much every other cell in your body, if you hurt it or harm it, you're going to feel pain, but neurons feel no pain. The headache that we feel is pressure, but not pain. So if you had to have brain surgery, and you may have seen this on TV or in a movie, where they have probes and they're sticking them right into the brain of the person on the hospital bed to find out which part of the brain which part of the body that part of the brain controls, and they feel no pain. They don't need any anesthesia. They're wide awake, and they're saying, oh yes, I feel a tingling in my finger, but no pain. And how many of these neurons? Well, a whole bunch. So in the brain alone, 100 billion, not million, but billion neurons. And that's roughly the same as the number of stars in our galaxy, which if you've ever been up north on a dark and clear night and you see all those stars, you get a sense of just how many that could be. And the beautiful thing about these very interesting, unusual brain cells is that those 100 billion neurons can make 100 trillion connections. And it's the connections that really matter. It's the connections that help us learn new things, and it's the connections that give us the memories. Facebook has 1.3 billion users and 180 billion connections, so not nearly as many connections as our neurons have in our brain. And one last thing about the brain anatomy is kind of important to know. It's how it talks to each other. So I talked about the chemicals that those neurons, those tree roots were floating in. And they change all the time. There's a different balance of them. And depending on the balance of chemicals, it affects our mood. And it can affect our ability to learn and our ability to remember. Because these chemicals, some of them excite and help other neurons light up and help those electrical charges go through to more cells. Some of them inhibit, and they stop the other neuron cells from talking to each other, and they slow things down. And you may have heard of some of these. Dopamine is one, and that makes us feel happy and motivated. Here it's eating a hamburger, because I guess that makes a lot of people feel happy. The dopamine hit is often what drug addicts also get. It's that quick hit of pure pleasure that makes you want to go back and do it again, which is what, you know, a McDonald's French fry would do for me. Oxytocin, you may have heard about that with new mothers, often nursing mothers. They produce a lot of oxytocin, which helps them bond with their infants and feel this sense of closeness and intimacy. Endorphins this is associated with a weightlifting bar, are often associated with exercise. So you work out really hard, you exercise, and it helps to diminish pain. It's a natural painkiller. Serotonin makes us feel calm and connected. So all four of these, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin, they're kind of nice to have. They're the good ones. And that's what's up here, loving, happy, motivated. And then this last one is one I'm sure you've heard of, and that's adrenaline. And that's the one that doesn't make us feel so good. It helps us get out of bed in the morning, but it can make us feel anxious and afraid. And if you have a lot of that in your brain chemical mix, it actually makes it harder for you to learn new things and for you to remember the things that are already in there. So we want to increase these four, and we want to try and keep the adrenaline under control. And one way we can do that, and we'll learn more about that in a later session where we talk about nutrition, is by what we eat. Because often the way these chemicals are formed, the concentration of them, the balance of them in our brains is directly impacted by our nutrition and by our sense of calm. Okay, so our first official exercise, if you want to all unmute now, if you can, if you're still out there, just take your mute button off.
I don't know any of those.
Hi, Josetta. Nicole, Cheru, Maggie's on, okay. Nicole may be busy. Hi, Nicole, we're unmuting, all right. We're gonna try to remember these three names. Please don't write anything down. I'm watching you. Put those pens
I was
down.
ready.
Honor system. Okay. You're like me, Nicole. My first impulse whenever anybody tells me to remember something is to
I got
write it
that
down.
pen.
I'm lost
Yeah.
without my notes. But this one we're just going to try to use it's probably a hat pen that you're using. We're just going to try to use our memory. Okay, we're going to say them out loud 3 times all together. Carol Angel,
Angel,
Snowden
Whitehall,
Bob Waters.
Bob Waters,
Carol Angel,
Carol Angel,
Snowden
Whitehall,
Whitehall,
Bob Waters.
Bob Waters,
Carol
Carol
Angel,
Angel,
Snowden
Snowden
Whitehall,
Bob
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 Waters.
Waters.
All right, that's it for that. Don't write them down after we go on to the next slide either. You're just going to keep them in your head. Thank you. If you want to remute, this would be a good time. Okay. So a few more things that the brain needs. This is really important. What I want you to do is just take a big, deep breath in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Big breath in. Hold it for a second and then breathe out. Okay. What you did there, that one breath, 20% of that air went straight to your brain. It just hogs it. It takes it because all of those brain cells, remember, 100 billion, they need a lot of energy and they need oxygen to help them stay connected. So it takes more than its share because that little brain, those 2 fists, that's only about 1% of your total body. But it takes 20% of all the oxygen. So when we know that it needs a lot of oxygen, think for a second about what's an important thing I'm going to ask you all to try to do regularly, a couple times a week if possible. It's that horrible word, exercise. Because when you exercise, when you go for a walk, when you get your heart pumping, that pumps the blood. It gets a little more blood up to those brain cells and the blood carries the oxygen up there. So the most, beyond a doubt, best thing you can do besides stopping smoking for your brain is to get some exercise. You've got to keep that oxygen going up there to the brain. It wants it, it needs it, it loves it. And the other thing it needs is a lot of energy. All those brain cells sending out electrical impulses, that requires energy to do that. And if any of you are diabetic or know someone who's diabetic, you know that when blood sugar levels go low, glucose levels go low, people can feel very confused, can almost faint. They may start talking as though they have a dementia or an Alzheimer's. They may not be making any sense. Sometimes they sound as though they have been drinking because there's not enough oxygen and energy going to, not enough glucose going to those brain cells. So even though it says here though that it uses glucose and sugar for energy, that's true. But I had someone in one of these presentations once ask, well then eating Snickers bars is good for my brain, isn't it? Not so much. You don't need to eat the sugar directly in order for it to go to your brain. Your body will take care of converting whatever you give it, and it would really rather have very nutritious vegetables, lean meats, good protein. It will convert anything you give it into the glucose that it needs. So you want to stay away from the quick sugar hit of a Snickers bar or some other kind of candy. If you are diabetic, and I'm sure your doctor has told you this, really try to keep those glucose levels where they should be. Because every time they spike up or down, it can be a little hard on those little tiny arteries that feed all those brain cells. So that's an important thing to do too. Okay, yeah, the brain uses so much energy, it could power a 10-watt light bulb pretty consistently. And if you're really concentrating, trying to do a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle, a 25-watt light bulb. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, next exercise. And you don't need to unmute for this one unless you end up with a question as I try to describe what you're going to do. So you're going to take that plain piece of paper that you got earlier and you're going to fold it sideways, long ways like this. So it would make kind of a tent. Okay? You got that? Fold it long ways. Because what you're going to do is take your marker or your pen, your pencil, we're going to write our names across this way. We're going to write it from left to right, like you normally would, but we are going to do something a little different. And the different thing we're going to do is, if you're right-handed, like I am, you're going to put your marker or your pen in your left hand. If you're left-handed, you're going to put it in your right hand. So that other hand is called your non-dominant hand because it's the one that doesn't dominate. It's the one that's always secondary. It's the helper. It helps out the main hand, but it doesn't do the majority of the work. So take your marker, put it in your non-dominant hand, and then again, starting from left to right, I want you to write both your first and last names because I can see all of your names here and they're not so long that they wouldn't fit on there. I would try printing, but if you find this exercise pretty easy, try writing it in cursive instead. And the goal is just to make it legible. Really neat. We'll give you some bonus points, but mostly just so we can all read it. And the reason we suggest that you use a marker instead of a pen or a pencil is because they tend to be thicker. And when you're trying to write with your non-dominant hand, for some reason, thicker is just sort of easier to grasp because our fine motor control is not nearly as good with our non-dominant hand as it is with our dominant hand. Okay, if everybody's done that, let's just hold them up. I don't know if you can see, you have to hold it up pretty close to your computer. Oh, Nicole's looks good. Josetta and Donald both did it in cursive. I'm very impressed. Kathleen, if you hold yours up a little more, I can see it. Oh, that looks very neat. I can see the last two letters. Shift it over a little to your left. There we go. Oh yeah, very nice. Oh, and Patel, very nice. Yeah, you have a long name, Mayurika. And Cindy's, oh, you did both the printing and the cursive. Well, I'm impressed with all of you. I'm going to give you a round of applause. You should unmute so you can all give each other a round of applause. That was really good. Much better than I expected. Yeah, exactly. Somebody's got the applause icon going. Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, I should give that to all of you. So that is your first Brain Neurobics challenge. Brain Neurobics is a different aspect of Brainstorm. It's a way we come up with exercises to help you do more things to stimulate your brain. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. The next version of this that happens in July is it concentrates on brain neurobics and brain neurobic activities. The fact that we had to use our non-dominant hand made us concentrate a little more, right? I would guess for many of you, it's been years and years since you wrote anything with your non-dominant hand, hasn't it been? Unless you had an injury to an arm recently and then had to use your other arm, then that could make you better. But considering that it may have even been decades since you last wrote anything with your left hand, you did really well. And that's one of those little strains and stimulations to the brain that helps keep it alert and healthy. So that's brain neurobics for you, just a little taste of it. Really well done. I'm very impressed with people's willingness to try the cursive version. You see that I did not. I went the safe and easy way with the printing. And I've done this a lot, so I shouldn't be so scared to do that. So we talked about what the brain likes. It needs energy, it needs oxygen, it needs water, it needs fat. We need to talk a little bit about what it doesn't like. And a lot of these categories will be covered separately in future Brainstorm sessions. So you'll get a whole, 45, 50 minutes on sleep and stress. But yeah, one thing it doesn't like is a lack of sleep. The brain needs good sleep. So a show of hands, who here gets a good 8 hours of sleep every night pretty regularly? Anybody? Mayurika does. Okay, Josetta does, and her husband, good. Oh, not Josetta, just her husband. Okay. Nicole does not get 8 hours of sleep. How about 6 hours of sleep? 6 hours of sleep? Okay, Josetta's in there. I'm probably in there. If I say uninterrupted, then it gets to be even fewer because a lot of us especially as we're getting older. I'm getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I don't know how to stop it. Even if I don't drink after 6:30 p.m., it seems like my kidneys only seem to work at night. Sleep matters because that's when the brain heals itself. And that's also when our memories are consolidated. So what does that mean? If you think of the brain as a library, like a library, sleep is when the library books get reorganized and stacked back on the shelves where they belong. So all day long, we see things, we hear things, we experience things, we meet with people, we learn new things. Lots of thousands of bits of information are coming at us all through the day. And because we're in the middle of, we're awake and we're interacting, we don't really have time to deposit those, to organize those, to figure out where they go. But when you go to sleep, and if you have a good night's sleep, that means you have cycles of deep sleep and lighter sleep and dream sleep and non-dream sleep, and all those cycles matter. And in some of those cycles, that's when the brain organizes it. It takes all that information. It says, you just met Wanda at church, trying to remember her name, Wanda. She lives down the street from you. And it puts it in a place maybe with church information so that you can find it again. Or it says, so-and-so's birthday, Sam's birthday is coming up in 2 weeks. I need to buy a birthday card. So it puts it in a place of activity. Oh, when I go to the drugstore, I'll remember to buy Sam's birthday card. All of that information gets organized. When we don't sleep, it doesn't get organized. It's as if all those library books that people returned are just in a big pile. And so the next person who comes in trying to find that book that they're looking for has to sort through the whole pile and probably won't ever find it. So that information, those memories, those experiences, that sunset that you saw, it's in your brain somewhere, but if you can't access it, it's like it never happened. So you need those periods of good, sound sleep so that you can figure out everything that happened to you and put it in a place where you can find it again. Yeah, that's the most important part about sleep. We've also found out recently that when we sleep, those neurons, those cells, they shrink up a little bit. Each one shrinks and it leaves more space around it. And when it does, spinal fluid goes in there and sort of washes all the spaces in between the neurons. And it can wash out toxins and plaque and poisons and all sorts of bad things. Some things that we have associated with dementia and Alzheimer's. So you want to give it that chance to have a good wash every night too. I thought that was fascinating. They only found out about that about 6 or 7 years ago. Okay, that's sleep. Stress, I'm sure you've all heard about that. It makes us have more adrenaline and cortisol. It's a hormone that really can have a negative damaging impact on every organ and the brain. Stress in the brain is when, it doesn't take much stress to affect memory. So you're in the grocery store, you turn the corner, you're going down the aisle, and oh, there's that woman you met in church on Sunday. New woman, new to the area. She sees you, she says, "Hi, Cheryl," and you say, "Hi, how you doing?" Because you can't really quite remember her name. There's that little stress. You didn't expect to see her there, and the brain just goes blank. Then you go around the corner, you're in the frozen food section, she's gone, you're safe, you relax a second, you take a breath, and oh, that was Wanda. Oh, shoot, yes, Wanda. You almost want to run into her again so you can show off and let her know that you remembered her name. Teeny little bit of adrenaline, cortisol, can shut down the brain's ability to retrieve information. So we have to stay relaxed. Take a deep breath, give yourself a chance. Nicotine is bad because it constricts blood vessels. Remember, the brain needs oxygen, needs blood. If it can't get through those blood vessels to the neurons, then they start to die and they suffer. Alcohol, we know too much of it can be poison to the brain. Loneliness, we're learning more and more about that, especially in this COVID-19 time, is very harmful to the brain because there's no stimulation. Interacting with people is probably the most stimulating thing we can do for the brain. If you think about that, when you're talking to someone else, You're talking, you're listening, you're looking at them, you're reading their, looking at their eye contact, you're looking at their body language, you're deciding what you're going to say next, you're trying to understand what they're telling you. That's a lot happening right in the moment. And that's very good for the brain, very stimulating. And when you don't have that, it's a use it or lose it kind of thing, then the brain just gets lazy and stops trying. And depression for similar reasons. Long-term untreated depression can really increase a person's odds of getting dementia and Alzheimer's, they're finding out. So we want to try and avoid all of that. Okay, if you will all unmute again, because I need some help. Somebody can tell me, I don't know if you want to raise your hand, if you have that easily accessible. Somebody can tell me what they're seeing on this upside down slide. What's it look like to you?
Graduates?
Graduates, yes, so it's men probably. And what are they doing? They're just
Walking on a path.
walking on a path. Exactly. Yeah, it's not too tricky. And who wants to read those words at the top?
Oh, paths to ruts, paths to ruts.
Paths to ruts. Thanks, Josetta. Exactly right. Well done. And while you're unmuted, I'll ask you one question, then we'll talk a little bit about the slide. How many thoughts on average do you think we each have every day? Rough number. How many thoughts?
Oh, God. Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
1,000?
Yeah, I'll say 1,500.
1,500? Fewer than that? Okay. Anybody?
Millions.
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. Okay, we got a range from 1,500 to hundreds of thousands. Sometimes I've given this, and I hear somebody say, I only had about 2 thoughts today. Really feeling slow. Any other guesses? Okay, it's kind of in between. There's about 70,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
So thank you for throwing that out there. Whenever I mention this statistic, I think, however did they figure that out? Like, what sort of machine do we have that we stuck somebody's head in and it could count the numbers of thoughts somebody had? It just seems amazing to me that they could even come up with a number. So about 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay, if you want to remute, you can now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this paths to ruts. So this is your chance to say, thank you, brain, because each one of your brains did something that is truly remarkable. And we never give it the credit. We don't acknowledge how remarkable that is. I flashed to you a picture that is upside down. And I'm sure all of you almost immediately could tell that it was people standing on a path. Your brain automatically turned it right side up and figured out what it meant. The same thing, and even harder to do, with this backwards, upside down, paths to ruts words. The brain is truly incredible. We don't give it the credit that it deserves, that it could do that so quickly and so easily. But it also had to work a little bit at that too. It surprised the brain. And again, that's what we like about brain aerobics. It's those little surprises, those little shocks, those little chances to say, hey, wake up, brain, something different is happening. You really need to pay attention here. That's what stimulates the brain to make new cells and new connections. So good job. We talk about paths to ruts and 70,000 thoughts a day because, unfortunately, for many of us, as we get older, sometimes it's not really 70,000 new thoughts. It's 20,000 thoughts 4 times that same day, or it's the same 70,000 thoughts from yesterday and tomorrow, because we get in ruts. We do the same thing over and over again. We're 40, we're 50, we're 60, we're 70. Every day when we go for a walk, we go out the door and we turn right rather than left. When we drive to see our friend Sarah, we always take this road and we don't take that road. After a while, so much of what we do is routine, and the brain kind of falls asleep a little because it has figured out the connections from one neuron to another. It knows exactly how to connect, to do these same things that you do every day, to think these same thoughts that you think every day. And when it does that, it's not motivated to make new cells or new connections. It's not stimulated to do more. And it starts to kind of shrink down to just those routines that we have. And that's not good for us if we want to keep our brain healthy and vital as we get older. So we have to work harder to shake it out of its rut. Oh, okay. All right, so change is good. If you'll unmute now, that's another good time to do it. Let's see. I want you to cross your hands in front of you, just the way you normally would, cross your arms. Okay? You're just standing around, cross your arms. Everybody crossing their arms? Can you hear me? Okay, arms are crossed, normal way. Now we're going to cross them the other direction. Swap it around. It's a little tricky. I often see people kind of doing this, trying to figure out what it means to cross their arms the opposite way. Exactly. Now that's a very small change, right? Crossing one way versus crossing the other. And yet this new way probably feels kind of awkward. Doesn't it? Just feels just a little off.
Yeah.
It's not wrong. It's just not what we're used to. For whatever reason, we started doing it this way from whatever age we start crossing our arms, and we don't want to do it the other way. There's a
Hey,
resistance.
Cheryl,
Yeah.
I have a question. So is it like that based on, like you said, the dominance? If I'm left-handed, I'm used to going a certain way versus if I'm right-handed with the crossing of the arms?
I thought that. I actually tested it in one big group, and it didn't seem to be like, I thought the dominant arm would always be the one that was underneath, because that's the way I do it. But no, a lot of people, their dominant arm is the one that curves under like this, is not on top like that. So I can't figure out the pattern. I think it's
You're right. I just
whatever.
paid more attention, and my dominant did stay underneath.
See, and I like to put it on top. So I don't know why, but once our brain starts doing it a certain way, maybe it's just the way we saw our parents crossing their arms.
That's good.
We keep doing it that same way. So change is good, but even small change can be really hard. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it though. The arm crossing police are not going to come arrest you if you start crossing your arm in a different direction. But you notice that you had to think for a second, right? You engaged the brain. The first time, you just did it. You didn't think about it. And then I made you think about it. Again, that's a perfect example of what brain neurobics is going to try to do, is get you to have these small moments every day where you have to think about what you're doing before you do it. Not big things. You don't have to learn to play the violin. You don't have to learn to speak French. These little things, they can stimulate the brain too. So thank you for that. Then one more thing before you mute again. Another way you can try brain neurobics right now is if you're wearing a watch and you have it on a wristwatch, and I know a lot of people don't anymore, but if you have it and you can change it to your other wrist, take a minute and put it on the opposite wrist. And then you're going to sort of see how many days or weeks it takes before you stop looking at the old wrist that had it on and you start looking at the new wrist that you put it on. Because again, we make our decisions. I'm going to be a left-handed wrist wearer, I'm going to be a right-handed wrist wearer. And if you really want to give your brain a jolt, turn your wristwatch upside down when you put it on. So every time your eye looks over at that, not only is it not on the wrist that you thought it should be on, but your brain has to, like we did with that paths to ruts slide, has to turn it right side up to figure out what time it is. And it will be that extra little stimulation and jolt to your brain every time you look. These are such small things, but they take a really long time to get, at least it did for me, to get our heads out of the rut. I changed my bathroom waste can from one corner of the bathroom to the other corner of the bathroom. I didn't move it down the hall. I just moved it from one part of the bathroom to the other. It was 3 weeks before I stopped automatically throwing the tissues on the floor in the corner where there was no longer a wastebasket and had to bend over and pick it up. Yes, Josetta.
Well, we changed our bathroom probably 5 years ago. So our toothpaste that used to be on the right side was now way on a drawer on the left side. And still to this day, if I'm really tired at night and I walk in, I walk over to that left drawer and open it up and think, that's when I'm on automatic.
Isn't it remarkable? And when you say even to this day, because I found that with the wastebasket, if I'm tired, if I'm not paying attention, if I'm distracted with something else, I will still go back to the old routine rut way. Yeah, that's a really good point. Absolutely. Yes, Mayurika?
Yes, yes, you said it beautiful. I had a question that there is an old saying that more knowledge you collect, you make more wrinkle in your brain, and that keeps your brain younger. Is that true?
I'm going to show you a picture of a brain, but wrinkles in the brain are a good sign, because the more wrinkles is the more connections between sides of cells and areas of cells. So yeah, a wrinkly brain is a smarter brain, is a very learned brain. Good point.
Thank you.
Anybody else before I go on to the next one? Okay.
The question at the end.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge your brain again. Get ready for this one. So we're going to get this same piece of paper out. We're going to use the blank side. First, we're going to talk a little bit about mirror writing and what it is. And mirror writing is just that. It's writing something in such a way that when you hold a mirror up to it, it will look right. But when you look at it as you write it, it's going to look very wrong. So these are examples of mirror writing. Oh, you should probably unmute again if you muted, because I'm going to ask us all sort of, unless somebody wants to volunteer to read it, to read this top sentence. Anybody volunteering?
Cole will.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Give me a second.
Okay, Josetta, go ahead.
This is an example of mirror writing. Can you read this without a mirror?
Wow.
Wow, that was
I
really
don't
good.
know why. I've always been able to do this. We had to do it at the Toronto Science Center, I don't know, 50 years ago. The mirror with the there, and I just could start doing it. I have no idea why.
Are you left-handed by any chance?
No, I'm not left-handed and I'm not ambidextrous.
Are you artistic?
Yeah, my husband would say no.
I think he is.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because I have seen the rare person who can, many people can struggle through this one, but they really have a hard time with this second one, because this is someone's particular style of cursive, and it's not necessarily a good, neat style of cursive, and yet you just blew right through that.
It just is like almost as easy as reading the other. Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, when they have
fascinating.
those things that have your first and last letter only of a word,
Yeah.
those also it's just like I could read a paragraph as fast as I read. So I don't
Wow, I really would like to scan your brain. I want to know what's going on
you
in
have to do
there.
that.
That's pretty special. I like that. Yeah, that's, again, and I think the rest of you probably got through it too, and sort of as Josetta was reading it, you could see it. So another time to say, I appreciate you, brain, for being able to do that, because it's really a very hard thing to do. You notice the words are in the opposite order. We're going from right to left, and then each letter is turned facing the other direction. So we're going to see just how hard this is to write, because on your piece of paper with your marker or pen, you're going to write your own name, not Cheryl, Sam, or Donna. First and last if you can. Josetta, you might want to try it in cursive. I don't want you to start on the right side though. I want you to start left to right like you normally would write. So that means, say for my name, I have to start with the last letter of my name. And if I'm doing my full name, I have to start with the last letter of my last name, which would be P. And then bear in mind, and you're going to use your non-dominant hand. Yeah, we're making it harder and harder. I just keep stacking the hardness on top of one another. And each letter, as I said, is facing the opposite direction. People will write their names backwards, but just the letters backwards, not the letters oriented the opposite direction. So you see the C is open to the left instead of open to the right. So everything has to be twisted around. And I will, it's only fair, I'll try doing mine too. I'm really very bad at this.
Oh, I can just do it from my head easier than doing it from looking at it.
I've forgotten how to spell my name, Jonathan.
Going by gas, organized, see you later.
Oops.
Okay. I do not try it cursive, at least not when I'm going to show it to other people. But I hope a few of you did.
No way. Mine's really bad.
Did you do your first and last name or just your first name?
I switched my name to Ian. That would be easy.
Oh, you did do your first and last name. Now, if you want to test it, if you have a source of light in your room, hold it up to, turn it around and hold it up to, let's see. Yeah, hold it up to a window so light comes through from behind and you can see through it
Look at you
from
did
the
it.
back side, and it should look right then.
This is blood.
Let's see, I'm
Yeah, but
looking
there's
at
really good-
Sherman. That looks pretty good, Cindy. That looks pretty
Thanks.
good.
Put
And you
down.
had an S. S's are really hard for people. S's, Z's, N's, capital N's can be hard because the diagonal goes funny. How's yours look, Josetta? J's?
It's Don's and it's perfect.
Is it? Wow. I
But
can't.
I don't, well, I have to
Oh, you almost had it. I saw
Wait.
Dawn's.
get it. Yeah. Let me look at gallery view and I can see what I'm doing. That's the one.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that is
good.
good. W's can miss people up too. You had a lot of O's in there though. O's are pretty easy, I have to say.
I did my words backwards. I did my last name.
Oh, so you're,
When we had it.
My brain.
yeah, right. You should have
Okay.
started with your last name
Yeah.
rather than your first name. So you're Macaulay Marianne instead of
Yeah.
Marianne. How's Kathleen's look? Let's see. Oh, you had a C in there. Hold it up a little higher, up a little higher. And then to your left, maybe. Not quite so high. Down a little bit. Down, down, down. Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's good.
That's good. E's are tricky too. And how's your W look? Yeah. Did you have a little trouble with the W? No, your W is good. Wow. How about Mayurica?
I'm not sure.
Pull it down a little bit.
I'm doing it right. So what letters do you start with? I'm right, doing the wrong.
Your R, it needs to be turned around the other way.
Okay.
Yeah, your R should be facing the other direction.
Okay.
So this is a great little exercise you can practice at home just for fun. Try it. Try the cursive version too. You'll notice, and when we do this in big groups of 100 or 200 people, as soon as we give this assignment, the whole room goes so quiet because everybody's concentrating, because you really have to think about it. I mean, you're only writing your name, but I made it very hard for you. I made it be mirror, and I made you use your non-dominant hand to write it. So it's those little challenges that the brain loves, though. Your brain is saying, thank you, that was so fun. It also puts you in very good company, because one man who loved to mirror write, all of his notes and observations and invention information was in mirror writing. Leonardo da Vinci. You've heard of him, Renaissance man, genius. It doesn't get any better than being like Leonardo da Vinci. They're not sure why he used mirror writing, but truly all of his notebooks, mirror writing and cursive mirror writing. We think maybe it was so people couldn't steal his ideas, because it was a little hard. If you just glanced at it, no one would have been able to work out what it said. And it was very hard to get a mirror back in those days, so it was pretty safe. He was also left-handed. That's why I asked you, Josetta, whether you might be left-handed. And there are some theories that say people who are left-handed have a much easier time with mirror writing, just because of the way their brain is wired, and because of the fact that they have been forced to use their non-dominant hand more than they would have, because we're kind of a right-handed world. So they tend to use both sides of the brain more equally than those of us who are right-handed, and we just always just use the left hand, the left side of the brain. But the left-handed person has to use the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. So there you go. So here we are to wrinkles, and they can be beautiful, especially in little Shar-Pei puppies. I love these little guys. And also in the healthy older brain. So the question about the wrinkles, the plumpness, you see how many there are and you see how close they are to each other. That's a really good sign of great health in a brain. And this brain is probably 30 or 40 years old. We do find that with a normal aging brain, as we get older, it's very normal for the brain itself to shrink a little bit. So if you see a picture of an older brain, it won't look quite so plumpy like a 70 or an 80-year-old brain. And it will have more gaps in between these wrinkles. They don't think that they haven't been able to associate that with Alzheimer's or dementia or disease. It just happens starting at about age 20 or 30. You know, as we get older, some things get bigger and some things get smaller. Unfortunately, you know, our hips tend to get bigger and our brain gets smaller. I wish it was the other way around, but it isn't. What else happens in the older brain? And this is normal. We talked about those neurons and the electrical impulses shooting from one neuron to another in order to find a memory or to learn something new. Well, like the electricity in an old house, sometimes the insulation around the wires is going bad. It doesn't shoot quite as efficiently as it should or as quickly as it should. Things slow down. So one important tip we give to people is to give yourself time to remember. Take it slowly. It may not happen immediately, but it will come to you. If you relax, take a deep breath, give yourself a chance, it will come to you. The other important thing is we get more easily distracted, and we do not handle multitasking very well at all. And basically what the neuroscientists have found is there really isn't any such thing as multitasking. The brain can't do 5 things at the same time. What the brain does, what a younger brain does very efficiently, is jump from one thing to another thing to another thing very quickly. So, for example, when my daughter Hope was 17 years old, she would sit in our family room and she would have the television on and she would have an earbud in and be listening to music. And she would be chatting with her sister on the other couch and she would be doing her homework. And I was sure that she wasn't doing any of those things very well. So I'd come in and kind of quiz her and say, you know, what do you have? You got 4 things happening. You can't possibly know what's going on the TV. And she would tell me. And I'd say, well, you know, what did your sister just say to you? And she would tell me. Well, what question are you on in your assignment? And she would tell me. She knew. But that's because that young, nimble, very fast brain could hop from all those things very quickly in microseconds. Check in on the television, check in on the sister, check in on the music, check in on the homework, check in on the television, check in on the sister. As we get older and things slow down, we can't hop that fast. And whenever we try to, it uses a lot of energy for the brain. It can be exhausting. So even something as simple as having classical music playing in the background while you're trying to read a book and learn new information can be harmful, because your brain every 1/10 of a second is going to check in on the classical music and hear it for a second and think, oh yeah, I like that, that's Beethoven. And then it's going to come back to this book that you're reading and try to understand where you've been. And you lose something when you jump back and forth. And we don't have to, you know, there's no need to multitask. We don't have to impress anybody with doing 4 things at once. Just shut everything down, put all your focus on the one thing that you're trying to do and do well, and let your brain concentrate all its efforts on that. You'll feel better, it's easier for the brain. And then as we get older, less blood and less oxygen can circulate. So if we have any kind of artery or vein disease, or if we just ate too many hamburgers and French fries when we were younger, our arteries don't pump quite as much blood everywhere that they need to. That's again why exercise is so important. And so we don't get, it's a little harder to get all that oxygen and blood to the brain that it loves and wants. So that can seem like bad news, but this is the good news slide. And when we do this in a big room, you would hear now when I come to this slide, hallelujah, it would sing to you, but you have to hear me sing to you instead, because it doesn't work when I do it this way. And that's because there is great news about the brain that we just found recently, and that is that the brain can make new cells. So up until only about 12 years ago, we thought that you're born with a certain amount of brain cells, and you keep growing new ones till you're maybe I don't know, 13 or 14. And then at that point, you actually start pruning them away. So maybe your mother made you take piano lessons and your brain made some cells to learn piano and music and how to sight read. And then you stop taking piano lessons and now you're 13 or 14 and your brain is going to say, well, we're not going to use those piano lesson cells anymore. Let's just get rid of them. It was called pruning. So we can have more space for other things that you are learning. Oh, instead you're going to be a soccer player, so we're going to give you more cells on soccer playing. And that once those cells were gone though, they didn't come back. Or if you had anything that might have been damaging to the brain, maybe you drank too much alcohol for a while, you lost a lot of brain cells in that. When they were gone, they were gone. And so slowly over years and decades, we just had fewer brain neurons to work with. That is not true. And hallelujah for that, because we know up until the day we die, our brain is capable of and can be stimulated to make new neurons. And even more important than that, it can make new connections. So those cells that are there, we can form new paths. We don't have to keep going to those same ruts. We can make this cell talk to that cell over there that's never talked to it before, but now it is because we're learning something new and we need that. So that's really good news. But we also know that unless you force it to do that with little stimulating activities, it won't. Because like I said at the beginning, the brain is kind of lazy, left to its own devices, use it or lose it, it'll just lose it. It's like trying to build a bicep. Well, your bicep muscle's not going to get any bigger unless you lift heavier and heavier weights and you really encourage it and motivate it and force it to get bigger to lift them. If I keep just lifting a marker up and down, this bicep's not going anywhere. Well, if I don't force my brain to learn more things, to try something different, to wake up and see things differently, it's not going to build new cells and it's not going to make new connections either. So, speaking of learning new things and building new connections, we're going to see if everybody can remember. So open your name card, just find a blank spot somewhere on there. And now's the chance to write down those 3 names we learned at the start of class. And when you're done, unmute, because we're going to talk about that. Okay, anybody else done? When you're finished, unmute your microphone, please. Okay, Josetta's done, Marcia's done, Cindy's done, I think Maggie's done. Hey, Eureka, are you still with us?
Yes, I am having
Okay,
rough time.
good, you're unmuted. So everybody tried to write down those 3 names, right?
No.
All right, does anybody feel like they got all 3? Don't say them out loud yet, just tell them, okay, Josetta does. Anybody else feel like they got all 3?
Marcia did.
Sure.
90%.
Yeah, 90.
90%, okay. Who thinks they got 2? Feels pretty confident about having gotten 2 of them.
I do.
I do.
He does, okay. Anybody else think they got 2? Marcia?
I got all 3.
Wow.
Marcia thinks all 3?
Yes.
Okay. So
I think I got a
Do
piece
our
of those
class.
3, but I don't think I got them right.
I'm with you.
You had 3 names down there, but you're not sure they're the ones we were supposed to know.
I'm with Marianne. I think I have 1 and the other is just names.
Me too.
What's the one you think you have, Nicole?
I can say the name.
Yes.
Carol Angel.
Carol Angel. Everybody
Yeah.
else think that was one of them? Right.
Yes.
Very good. Bingo.
Nope, I put Kathy Angel.
Kathy Angel. Okay, we got the angel. You got half point for that one. Who wants to guess on what a second one was? Cindy, did you have which one? Give us another name that you have.
I have Bob Waters for the third
Bob
one.
Waters. Everybody agree that was one? Josette is.
Yes.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was 3. Wasn't that the third one?
That was
Yeah.
the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about who knows the middle one?
Hallway.
Dan Snowdell.
No.
Snowden White. something.
Snowden
Ah.
Whitehall.
Wait, what? I put
Snowden
Snowden
Whitehall.
White.
Whitehall.
It was Snowden Whitehall.
Snowden
Yes.
Whitehall. It's
I
a
didn't
very
get the
weird
hall
name.
part.
I messed that name totally up. I have Snowball White Hill.
That's not bad. And I'll tell you why in a minute, why that's not a bad guess and why your brain kind of went there. So did
Wait,
anybody
that's
get all
pretty
3
close,
of
Cindy.
them? Let's go to the next slide. Did anybody get all 3 of them? Carol Angel, Snowden Whitehall, Bob Waters.
Dude.
Yes.
Marcia did?
Marcia did.
I did mess
Marcia,
up
it-
on the hallway. I'm an artist, so I tried to picture them all. Carol with angel wings, Snowden standing in a hallway, but I forgot it was a white hallway.
Okay.
Bob drowning in the water.
Drowning.
Well, in water. But I had visuals. I tried to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did the same thing with visual, and I learned that the day before I had to go to a neurologist to be tested. A friend told me, and I did the same thing, making a picture. I had Carol with angel wings on it and Snowden, and I had the White House, but I knew the house wasn't right, and it was Hall, and then my brother Bob with water on him. So I was able to do that, and I said to the neurologist afterwards, I wouldn't have remembered any of them. Truthfully, none of them had I not done that. But I was with a gathering of people the night before and said I was going to the neurologist, and they said, here's what you have to do. So that I said to him, that's kind of like cheating, if you know.
It is, yeah.
It's, like, because I truly would not have remembered any of them. And
Those are such good strategies, and I'm surprised you hadn't stumbled on that strategy before then, because
I was lucky.
one of them is association, so associating one thing with another and then visualizing it. Those are very strong memory strategies. A lot of people use those. And we purposely picked these 3 names because there are good, kind of easy ways, natural ways to associate them. They all kind of have to do with the water and snow and winter. So I've had people say, yeah, I thought about Christmas, and that's when you go caroling and you fall back in the snow and make a snow angel. Okay, Snowden, it's like snow is falling down in the bear's den when he hibernates in the winter, and it's also making the hall really white. And then Bob Waters, I've heard people say, I just thought of somebody bobbing up and down in the water. I hadn't heard anyone say, I thought about Bob and he was drowning. But whatever works for you, that's good. You're going to remember it. So poor Bob, I hope he made it out alive.
Yeah.
Did anybody, I've also had, anybody have any other strategies that they've used? I've had some people use just the initial, like they'll just remember CASWBW. For some reason, that's enough. Mayurika, is that what you do? Did you try to do that? Just remember the
first one.
Just on the first one. Okay. Because we all have our own approaches to it. Just remembering the first initial would not have been enough for me to remember the names. Or I might have confused the Waters with the Whitehall because they both start with W. Yeah. I tend to do association, and I've been trying, like you, Josetta, more to really visualize it, to really see them in my head, going through those motions to remember it. That's great. And in the brainstorm session that's all on memory, you'll get lots of strategies, better ways to learn numbers and images and names when you meet somebody, how to remember their name. So the whole session is just about that. Okay. So we're almost to the end, and the next session is more about the brain neurobics, which is a lot of it is using your senses also. We didn't talk about that at all, but it is trying to engage more senses, because we know that memories are stronger the more senses that are associated with them. If you think back to your very first kiss, maybe when you were a teenager, You probably can kind of remember not only where you were, but how it smelled, how it felt. You know, was it warm outside? Was it cold? How those arms felt around you, the cologne of the person or the perfume of the person you were with. The more senses that are engaged, the stronger and the more intense the memory and the longer it tends to last. Which is also sadly the case with tough memories, with the post-traumatic stress syndrome kinds of memories. So people in Vietnam, they hear the bombs go off, they smell the smell of what those bombs smelled like, and the jungle, and they can feel all of that around them, which makes the memory so intense that it's hard to get rid of them too. But for pleasant memories, it's a great way to remember things. So we'll try to engage your senses and also use that non-dominant hand. So a little homework you can do between now and the next one is try to use that for some more things. Try brushing your hair with your non-dominant hand. Try eating a meal. I've tried this. I do this quite a bit because I tend to eat too fast. And truly, trying to use my left hand to work the fork makes me slow down, or I spill it all over my lap. So it makes me think about it and really engage with it and actually appreciate it a little more because it's harder to get to my mouth. If you're really motivated, try moving your computer mouse with your other hand. Yeah, Mary, I'm with you. I found that really, really hard and really frustrating because it just doesn't want to go where I need for it to go, and it's so slow. But good practice, or something simple like setting the table with your left hand. So try and use it as much as you can, or find other ways to shake up that routine. Keep that watch on that opposite wrist and maybe turn it upside down. And we'll have lots more tips in the next one about that. One last exercise before we go, and you can all unmute for this one. I'm going to move back. I don't know if you'll be able to see me. Okay, so I'm putting my foot up really high in the air, but you don't have to do that. You're just going to take your foot just slightly off of the ground, your right foot, but you want to just circle your foot around in a clockwise motion, just at the ankle, just circling it around a little bit, just a little bit off the ground. And then while it's circling clockwise, you're going to take your right hand and draw the letter 6, the number 6 in the air. Okay, so keep circling clockwise and then draw that number 6. You can see my foot does it too. Yes, I can't get it to go the other way either.
I can do it with my left hand, I bet.
And your foot will reverse.
So if you have your right foot and your left hand, you can do it?
No, I can't. No.
Yeah, I can't do that. It seemed easy there for a second, but I couldn't get it. And then you can try it with your left hand and your left foot, but I don't know that you'll find that any easier either. And we just use that as a, now my son was very challenged by this, and he spent like a week and a half trying to get it and finally did, but I don't know that I could ever get my brain to do it. It's a function of how the brain is wired. So the right side and the left side are all trying to be symmetrical and do the same thing at the same time. So they want to go in the same direction. What you can do is cheat. I had somebody at one of our presentations point this out to me. If you make the 6 starting inside the loop and then come out like backwards, because then you're making it go clockwise too. But that's not what we're telling you to do. That's cheating. Yeah. If you really make it 6 going counterclockwise and clockwise, the brain just wants to convert back to making them both going in the same direction at the same time. So we like to say that's a sign that you still need a few more of these brainstorm sessions so that we can get rid of that rut and routine that you're in. Do you have any questions? Hey, Eureka.
If you move around a lot in your life, does that mean your memory builds up better?
I think the spatial memory tends to be stronger because every time you move, you're in a different location. You've got different roads and landmarks and houses, and I think that can be very stimulating, very good for direction finding forever, and probably good for short-term memory because you're going to meet new people and learn new names and new customs, especially, and then if you're moving to a place with a different language, that's an extra stimulating factor. So yes, even though moving is really hard and stressful, it's probably very good for the brain.
Cheryl?
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I use a lot of.
Is that Marcia talking? Marcia,
Yes,
that you?
it's Marcia.
Okay, can you speak up just a little bit?
Okay. I used to use a lot of sleep aids for years. Does the brain organize as well when I sleep with sleep aids? Otherwise, I only sleep about 4 hours, and it's hard to go to sleep.
You only sleep about 4 hours a night, did you say?
Right, unless I use sleep aids, which I've used for a long time. So does the brain organize as well when I'm on so many sleep aids?
It depends on the sleep aid. Do you find that you get a good, deep, restful sleep on the pill or is it melatonin, some kind of supplement?
Yeah, I'm trying to switch off the generic Ambien that I use for work.
Good. I would recommend that. It's just whatever you take. It's not good to take any one for very long. You know,
Yeah,
more
I'm
than
trying different ones now, but it is hard to go to sleep.
trying to find something that will work.
Yeah. But thank you. I'll tune in next week and see what you bring up.
Yeah, definitely tune into the one that's about sleep, because we talk about lots of things and other things you can try, although I'm guessing you've tried lots of them, you know, just sort of trying to calm
Probably
down.
been on the Zolpidem or the Ambien generic too long, so my body is now used to that.
Yes, yeah, you do. We do get sort of, I hate to say addicted, that's too strong, but our body does get used to it and forgets how to fall asleep on its own.
Cheryl, when is the next one that's going to be focusing on sleep?
Sleep is probably
August.
number 4 or 5.
It's actually August. So
Oh, it is. Oh, it's the third.
It's August 20th will be our sleep. It's about sleep.
There you go.
So that's great. Next month, in July, it's going to be on the 16th, and that's going to be on the brain neurobics.
Great.
So yeah, you got 2 months of coming up of really good brain exercises for us.
I just read something interesting while we're all in isolation in COVID. But what they're finding is people's dreams have become more intense and almost like realistic. And they think it's because the brain is not getting as much outside stimulation as it normally would, because we're not meeting with people, we're not leaving the house. And so it's forced to make dreaming more interesting in order to stay stimulated. It's funny how it will do what it needs to do to try and keep itself entertained. So I don't know if any of you have found that your dreams are a little easier to remember, maybe more intense, maybe seeming more colorful. Because as we strip away all the other things that would normally stimulate our brain, it's forced to go inward to find that. Any other questions?
I think Josetta has one.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
I wanted to know that you were talking about how our brain gets lazy if we don't do something. Well, what about multitasking? Does it get lazy somewhat? Or I know that we slow down, but if we just give it up completely, which I don't think I could do, but you know.
Oh, you're a good multitasker, are you?
No, I don't know that I'm good. I mean, I start this and I'm so easily distracted. You know, you go into a room and then I see something and then I start that. So that's what I'm saying by multitasking, is I have a lot going on. Although I'm very good at not saying, okay, that's it, folks. I got to get all this, you know, I get them all wound up. I get most of them, all of them I have to wound down by the end of the day, so that I'm not just left with these strings, because I can't function, I've learned, with too many things like that going on. And I have to have like clear surfaces if I'm working. I can only take so much chaos, I'm aware of that in my life.
It almost sounds like you are many tasking, but you're still doing sort of one thing at a time, but just not for very long.
That's true. Yeah, although I used to keep the television on, kind of catching the news, and sometimes do that, but I'm
fine now that distracts.
Now I've said, no, I'm not going to do that, and it's better.
Yeah, our brain is just much more easily distracted now. But if you are able to still do them to the quality that you want to, if you're still doing them well enough, whatever the projects are, if you're not noticing that somehow the quality has fallen, then I think you probably have a point there, that your brain is used to working this way, it continues to work this way, and as long as you keep kind of forcing it to do that, maybe it will stay strong in that area. It's just the general slowing of everything in our brain as we get older tends to take its toll on most of us, but not all of us. You could be the exception. I don't know that I was very good to begin with at doing what you're doing, like keeping a lot of projects going at the same time. So
I've just always said that a mother is as a multitasker.
well, that's true. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that, 40 years ago, I did that course about drawing on the right side of with the right side of the brain. And I wonder if that's what's made a difference with the mirror writing and things like that.
Can you explain a little? I've heard of this. Can you explain a little to the other people what that entailed?
That was 40 years ago. No, I'll get the book out and glance through it and it'll remind me. It was very effective. It was very effective. And I think it was about
try and get
drawing
you
with
to
the
just,
left hand.
yes, to use that other hand and then to not think about things so much from what I've heard, to just sort of, go from impulse to just make it happen and be more spontaneous to access certain levels of creativity. But you see, you said your husband doesn't consider you much of an artist. I think probably you are artistic and you have that bent.
He's a trained artist. He went to art school.
Oh, well, you're a family of artists then. So that's why your brains could handle that mirror writing better. See, I knew it. I figured there was some artistic talent there. That's great.
You just haven't found your talent yet. There's many. I mean, if I had to be a potter, I never would have been a painter because I just can't handle it. So you just have to keep trying different art and knitting or crochet.
You're fading in and out a little bit as you speak, but I heard something about if you had to be a potter, you couldn't have handled it.
Right, and so she may need to just hunt around for try different forms of art. It's out there, but you may not be a painter or a drawer, but you may have other.
Or maybe a little bit of all of them. It sounds almost like Josetta likes to dabble in all of them. That's why you have so many projects going at the same time.
Josetta, did you finish your berry bowl yet?
No, because I was going to do it Sunday and then, Don went into the hospital and then.
Okay.
So no, it's right there. I haven't put it away. I'm still working on it. I have everything ready to go now.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad to see Dawn back out with you. So that was good. What's a fairy bowl?
A berry bowl.
Oh, berry bowl. Berry bowl. Sorry.
Yeah. They take a slab of clay and they're making a bowl out of it, to wash your berries and to have your berries.
Oh, sounds
so
nice.
I can't wait to see how Josetta's turns out.
It sounds like she's pretty good at this kind of stuff, isn't she?
Very talented.
Yeah. Very humble, but very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I apologize. I have to leave right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcia, for coming on.
Thanks, Marcia.
Nice
to meet. Take care.
I'll get the video going next time somehow.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are there any other last questions?
Anybody else?
No questions for me, but this really was awesome.
Oh,
Yes,
I
I enjoyed it
Thank you,
too.
Nicole.
I don't know how this can be like more senior community based because I'm learning so much and so much. I've saw so much and learned so much from so many. I'm like, I'm coming on next month with everyone else.
Well, you're really the right age to start thinking about this kind of brain health stuff because the earlier you adopt some of these things, the better. Yeah.
I was saying that. I was like, you need to start adopting these things earlier. Be like Josetta and Kathleen and Tora. I'm like,
I wish I'd known about it 20 years ago. I think this brain would be working a little better now, but
yeah,
better late than never, I always say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole, I saw your daughter behind you. You could give her these tests.
They were on. I had to get them out of my meeting, but it was so interesting. They were trying to read the backwards mirror writing.
Oh, that's awesome.
You're probably pretty good at it. The younger brain can usually do it. She could probably mirror write and use her other hand.
Wow.
Yeah, test her and get back with us next time.
I am. I'm going to use some of this. Yeah.
That young limber brain, it can do anything.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy Hap was here. Hap is here. I'm happy and we'll be here next month too.
We're happy to have Hap. It's all good.
All right, thank you everybody for coming, Cheryl. This was so educational and so engaging.
I really
cannot
enjoyed
thank
it.
you enough.
You
Thank
stimulate
you.
my
Wonderful
brain.
day,
So I
everybody.
appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
bye-bye now.